Hey, what's up guys? This is Red Wolf 316 coming at you with my first topic video. And bear with this dumb robotic voice. But anywho, this topic video will be about why I believe the 2010s so far is becoming the worst decade for pro wrestling. I know it's related to a subject that has been talked about so many times by wrestling fans, but I want to give my own view on it even though I'm not really going to say anything all that different. And I know we haven't hit the end of 2019 yet for me to judge the decade as a whole. But let's be honest with ourselves. Since we are at the end of 2016, I can say that these past 6 years of pro wrestling have sucked. WWE, TNA and ROH, you name it. I started watching wrestling around 1997 and WCW, my first wrestling company I watched as a kid. I grew up on the NWO, DDP, Goldberg, Ric Flair, Macho Man Randy Savage, Scott Steiner, Booker T and many more. After that I started watching WWF around 1998 but didn't fully get into it until 1999. Yes, we all know how great the Attitude Era was. I grew up on guys like Stone Cold, The Rock, Undertaker, Mankind, Triple H, DX, The Hardys, The Dudleys, Chris Jericho and many more. Wrestling back in those days weren't perfect. There was bad here and with WWF and especially WCW. But you didn't care, there was so much good that it made forget about the bad stuff. Wrestling back in those days was the best time to be a fan. Wrestling back then was cool, hip and popular for fans. You could walk around with an NWO, D-Generation X or Stone Cold Steve Austin t-shirt in public, and people would think you're cool. They say nice t-shirt. My friends and I used to have friendly debates over which company was better, WWF or WCW. Back then wrestling was must-see television. Now wrestling today, especially WWE, have become can-miss television. You can miss an episode of Raw and SmackDown nowadays and you can feel like you haven't missed anything at all. I haven't watched WWE as a fan since 2013. And only watch it 2 times a year casually to watch Royal Rumble and WrestleMania, since WrestleMania season is the only time nowadays they'll put in the most effort, which isn't saying much. Yes, WWE have had a few good moments here and there these past 6 years, but overall WWE have not done anything to keep an average viewer watching every week. Ever since 2001, when WCW and ECW went out of business and competition was completely dead in pro wrestling. The WWE have gotten lazier and lazier year by year. Don't get me wrong. I love the Ruthless Aggression era. At least from 2002 to 2005 in my opinion. But after that, WWE just got more stale due to no competition. It's not better than the Attitude Era, but it was a good to decent time in wrestling and a hell of a lot better than now. 2007 was when it started to suck for me, with John Cena being shoved down your throat, his 1-year reign of terror as WWE Champion, the Benoit incident and Hornswoggle being shoved your throat, leading WWE to go PG. Now don't get me wrong. WWE can still be good even though they're PG. It's how they use PG is what makes it shit. WWE were great back in the days of the Hogan era. You had so many characters and larger-than-life personalities. Not to mention compelling storylines. Politically correct is the way to describe them. WWE have become incredibly corporate. Because this is a different time in wrestling, WWE have become so pacified. They are more concerned about pleasing their sponsors and soccer moms with the content they present on TV. They are more concerned about returning the money on their investment and stockholders than putting out a good product. I know as business WWE did it to make a lot more money, but it also has hurt the quality of the product. And that's the sad truth. Now let's look back at the previous years of the 2010s. Starting with 2010. 2010 was one of the worst years I've lived through as a wrestling fan, when they had one of those stand-up for WWE political ads that many idiots bought into, which was all a part of Linda's Senate run she wasn't going to win. WrestleMania that year sucked. But the Nexus angle started off good and made WWE seem like must-see TV, but then WWE fucked it by having Super Cena good over them. WWE that year was more about shoving John Cena down your throat and Linda McMahon's Senate run. TNA that year was TNA's downfall of TNA when Hogan and Bischoff came to TNA and started turning TNA into a glorified WCW. TNA fucked up that year and lost their momentum from what could have made them a good alternative to WWE, and instead they do this. I was a fan of TNA from 2005 to 2007 and I thought they were a good alternative to WWE at one point, but it's sad they had to go a shitty direction. And Ring of Honor I tried to get into but could never get into it because it's boring with these boring vanilla midget wrestlers with boring personalities having these spot fest matches. Not to mention some boring ass guy named Roderick Strong as our ROH champion. Fuck to 2010. I hate that year and I never want to look back on it. And it's one of my least favorite years in wrestling. WWE in 2011 is viewed by some fans to be a great year. But for me, I think that year is overrated. You fans only loved that year because of CM Punk's pipe bomb, which is what he calls it. I will admit it did make WWE must-see TV for a little bit, and CM Punk and John Cena had a great match at Money in the Bank and also had a great ending to the match that left you guessing what's gonna next. That was great stuff and it did give me hope that WWE might get better. But then they fucked it up with bringing him back like 8 days later, having Kevin Nash cost CM Punk his WWE title, having him lose it to Alberto Del Boring, and then having him lose to Miz and R-Truth and getting buried by Triple H. Yes, he won it back later on but nobody cared. WWE already fucked up CM Punk's momentum. The hottest storyline at that time ruined by the stupid WWE. And yes, there were a few things to like that year but WWE never capitalized on them. One of the few things I liked was Mark Henry's Hall of Pain push. That was awesome. Even though it was too late to put the world title on Mark Henry at that time, because he was getting older, and I thought 2006 was the best time to do it. But either way, Mark Henry deserved it. Christian getting the world title was a good moment, but fuck WWE for taking it away from him so quickly and giving it to Randy Orton. The Rock's return was great. It was great seeing him again after 7 years. R-Truth's heel turn was awesome, but then he was buried by John Cena. I thought R-Truth that year should have been giving at least one run with the world title. And WrestleMania 27 sucked at pay-per-view and was nothing more than a throwaway show to hype up WrestleMania 28, which the main event would be John Cena vs. The Rock. Overall, 2011 was a disappointing year. I will admit it is the best year of the PG era, but that's not saying much. To say it's one of WWE's best year is stretching too far. It just tells me how low of standards wrestling fans have nowadays. I might talk about WWE in 2011 in a later video and will go more in depth with it if I have time. TNA in 2011 sucked. Fuck Immortal, and that's all I got to say. WWE in 2012 was a boring ass and was the year my interest in wrestling really started to drop. CM Punk's 1-year title reigns was getting boring. This was the year WWE went 3 hours, which was a stupid idea. And it made me stop watching Raw later on. And WWE's writers got more lazier. The only thing I liked was Rock vs. Cena, Raw 1000, and Brock Lesnar's return. Other than that, fuck that year. TNA in 2012 looked they were starting to improve with pushing Bobby Roode, James Storm, and Austin Aries. And there were other things I liked about it. I looked like TNA was starting to hear the complaints from fans, but then the Aces and Eights angle started and TNA went back to their old ways. At least after Bound for Glory to me. The Aces and Eights was interesting at first, but then it turned out to be one of the worst factions ever and one of TNA's worst storylines. 2012 was TNA's best year since their downfall era, but I wish TNA could have kept their momentum. 2013 was another shitty year for wrestling. It was the year where later on I stopped watching wrestling. After the predictable bullshit main event with Rock vs. Cena 2, I hated wrestling that year. I stopped watching Raw in late 2013 because what's the point in watching something when you already know what you're going to get? 3 hours of bullshit. I felt like I've invested my time into this company long enough. Like I said earlier, since then I've only been watching 2 times a year for Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. TNA still continued that bullshit aces and eights angle. It drove many fans including myself to stop giving a fuck about TNA. Why would you continue a shitty angle for over a year when fans aren't interested? I can't talk about WWE in since 2014 to now because I haven't heard anything good coming from wrestling in those years. The only fans that will tell you it's getting good are indie fans. Let me be honest here, guys. I don't give a shit about this indie era of WWE. These guys are boring, they have no characters and are all about flips and kicks. I'm more of a character and storyline guy. The only wrestler I like is Bray Wyatt and Roman Reigns to some extent. Why? Because Bray Wyatt has a character and can talk on the mic. Something most wrestlers these days lack. And I like Reigns a little because he looks like a badass. But from what I hear, WWE is booking them bad because they're listening to these smarks that want them to push these indie guys. Let me tell you indie fans something. Your Kevin Owens, Seth Rollins, Sami Zayn and Finn Balor's will never draw money for the company just doing 5-star matches. Casual fans don't care about that shit. What draws are characters, storylines, and star power. Fuck this indie bullshit. And even wrestling they can't get right either because none of them can tell stories or know in-ring psychology. I can't believe WWE caved in to cater to these types of fans. And I don't care who I piss off, deal with it. And I don't give a shit about WWE bringing back the brand extension. The brand split in the past was a fucking failure to begin with. It started off good but then it got old and people wanted it to end. Now you're brought back something that didn't so much work in the past. It just shows how original WWE is these days. At least WWE had a better roster back in those days and had better storylines. Fuck that bullshit. It seems like WWE has gotten worse. And just cause WWE isn't shoving John Cena down your throat as much doesn't mean it's great. As for TNA, nothing has changed. The only wrestler I like is Broken Matt Hardy. And to be honest, he's the most interesting wrestler today. Why? Because he has a character. Other than that, fuck TNA. And fuck Dixie Carter. She is a cancer to that promotion. The only wrestling I would watch is Lucha Underground. It's not a show made for everybody but it's a good alternative to WWE. Something TNA failed to do. At least it's more story and character driven, which is something wrestling is lacking today. And it feels different. I love the production they have but I'm not the biggest fan of their styles of wrestling. The lucha style is too choreographed. And I don't think that style would appeal to many casual fans. But who knows? So good for them and I hope they continue to grow and hopefully get popular. Cause seriously. Wrestling needs more competition. And as Ring of Honor. Fuck ROH, I'll never get into that boring ass promotion. They've been around since 2002 and they still can't grow their small ass promotion. It just shows how far just wrestling can get you. Overall the 2010s so far has the worst decade for wrestling. And it seems like it's gotten worse since I've stopped watching with this focus being on this indie bullshit. And I hope somebody in the business has the balls to tell these companies what they're doing wrong. And I hope fans stop supporting this shit. I'm not asking for the Attitude Era but come up with new ideas and have a vision to make wrestling great again. And I hope the next decade of wrestling is better. That is if wrestling is even alive then. But anyway, fuck this era of wrestling. I'm out.
It wasn't my fault.